Hey there, lovely listeners. Welcome to Uniquely Wired Podcast. I'm your host, Nani. On this podcast, we uncover the beauty and nature of autism through heartfelt conversations. Let's jump in. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Uniquely Wired Podcast. On this episode, we are going to dive into the topic of, pre-puberty with our great and amazing guest, Kelly, who is Gracie's mom. Some of you may be familiar with her. Some of you may be already following her and her beautiful journey with her daughter, who is autistic and non-speaking. And so today on this episode, Kelly's pretty much going to dive into the topic of her daughter, entering that puberty stage. But what is happening leading up to that, right? So she's going to share with us some insights and also some advice before we end the episode. So Kelly, go ahead and tell us, one, who you are, where you're from, and tell us a little bit about Gracie.
Okay, so I am Kelly, Gracie's mom from Gracie Ella Blooms. I am from the Bronx, New York. I'm born and raised New York City, and very proud. I have 3 kids, 22, he's typical, 14, he's special needs, and Gracie, 11, special needs. Gracie and my middle son are so different, but yet, similarities are there. So, like, I like to say they have been swimming in the same pool, and every now and then they meet in the middle. And then that's, the similarities. You're like, oh, okay, they have a little, couple little things alike. I homeschool Gracie. I have been since she's 6. She just turned 11. She uses AAC for communication. We don't do any therapy. We stopped therapies probably around 7.5, if that, maybe even a little earlier. So it's me and Gracie all day, every day.
I love that. And I know, if you don't mind me asking, I know you said, you don't do therapies ever since she was 7. You mind sharing a little bit, was it a bad experience or is it just your personal, choice?
Okay, so the reason behind stopping all therapies, therapy isn't for every kid. And just, one thing I always say is when a kid is non-speaking, autistic, or whatever their disability could be, doesn't always mean therapy for progress, right? Okay, so for Gracie, therapy did not work. So those 30-minute sessions would look like chaos. It would be 20 minutes of just trying to get her to comply almost and be interested in what they were trying to do with her. And then before you know it, the session was over. She just didn't care. And Gracie is like, you have to be quick with Gracie. So back then, especially at that age, if you're fumbling around looking for it, you already lost her. You already lost her. You're digging through a box. So if you're not set up and like ready to go through the whole 30 minutes, you lost her. She's out. She's over it. She's checked out. She's not going to do it. But also, honestly, the main reason for me stopping was I was the parent that was like, I'm going to sit in and watch majority of sessions, right? I would watch them and say to myself, I'm already doing this and then some. You know what I mean? I'm already doing all this. This isn't helping. She's getting frustrated and I'm already doing all this. So I decided one day, especially with speech therapy, she had a few therapists throughout the years. And one thing I noticed is they didn't know AAC. None of them knew it. So I'm like, what are we doing here? I know it. So why am I sitting here for 30 minutes and they don't know it? So how is this helping? Right. So over time, I took over everything. I was like, I'm the occupational therapist. I'm the speech therapist. I'm, the life skills coach. I'm all the things. And that's kind of, how it went.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you, sharing that and being so vulnerable because maybe some families will relate, to your story. And I agree, it's not for everybody. And the truth is that sometimes people that are in the therapy field are not even called to be in it. That's just the truth, and you are in the wrong calling. And so you are trying to figure all these things out, and you're just losing the parent more. They're becoming more frustrated, and I can't even imagine everything you felt, during that season of your life with Gracie. And I know, you know, I obviously can't say the same, right? Because we have truly been blessed with my son's OT and speech therapist. And guess what? She actually knows AAC, and she's like a huge advocate for it. And guess what? When a parent doesn't know what to do with their AAC, I'm like, Katie, we need you. We need you to help. And she's like all hands on. She don't care how far this family is. She would try her best to help them. And so, but again, not every family, has that advantage, or, just they just don't have those type of people. It's unfortunate, but it's the truth. And obviously Gracie's much older than my kiddos, so I know back then even it was hard. And it's frustrating for us as the parents as well. It's frustrating for the kids, but it's also for us. Like, it's a lot that we have to take in, a lot of information. So again, thank you for sharing that, Kelly. Now, are you able to share with us, how are you navigating um those physical and emotional, changes in your daughter as she is reaching puberty? Because she just turned 11, right? Yeah, she just turned 11, so she's very close. So please share with us, how are you navigating that as a mom? Because you're also dealing with your own with your own emotions, your own things, when you're hitting that time of the month. Listen, don't talk to me. I don't want to hear it. Give me all the things I'm craving and I'm good. But for her, it must be a little different. So just share with us some of that.
So, how I do things with Gracie, she's the last year, she is most definitely starting to have changes emotionally. Her hormones are definitely starting to come through strong. And so we have her books that we go through. I have already made the folder on her AAC with all the period, the cycle, everything about it. And one thing I do is I expose Gracie to everything with myself. I model with myself. So Gracie is very aware of what having your period is. Gracie is very aware of what it looks like. She's very aware of how you dispose of it. Get a new one. How do you clean it? All of the things. And I purposely expose, and this goes for everything, not just that, for everything, anything self-care wise. I expose her to it because as long as she's visually seeing it, she's learning. Gracie is a visual all day. Like, she watches everything. So she's very well aware of what it is, what it looks like. And then I purposely, even if I don't have cramps, even if I purposely will, while I'm on my cycle, say, oh, mommy's stomach hurts. I have cramps. And then I'll go in her AAC and show her where that is. And then I'll pull out her books. And these are perfect opportunities to teach her and prepare her for that. So emotionally, here I am. I'm like, oh, mommy's tummy hurts. I'm going to take Motrin. I'm going to put a heating pad on. I'm going to take a bath. So I'm showing her all the tools, all the things that you can do when it's your time. So she is very well aware of it. She's been exposed to it. Exposure is everything. If you can, as a mother with a daughter that is going to eventually get her period, if there's one thing I can stress, expose them to yours. Because believe me, they will see, they will learn. And when her time comes, she won't be like shocked and horrified by it, because she'll know exactly what it is. It's just, now I have it. Oh, look, you're like mommy. Mommy has hers. Now you have yours. And the same thing goes, I have her in sports bras now. Even before she needed them, about a year before I started to expose her to the sports bra, um, and I made sure I got her all the same colors like I have. And I'll say, okay, which color do we want to wear today? So everything is like, look, mommy has them, you have them, you're going to wear them, I'm going to wear them. And now she's at the age where she's budding, things are growing. And so I'm like, oh, look, like mommy, you're getting like mommy. So I think that is so important. Exposure is everything. Emotionally, Gracie's capable of, you know, getting herself through her emotions much faster now than she was able to. I feel like at 9 years old, a lot changed. There was a growth. There was an emotional self-control, coping, all of it. And she knows, like, when she needs downtime, she'll go inside. She doesn't want to be bothered. Leave me alone. And that's fine. I'm like, okay, big emotions. And she just says yes. And I'm like, cool. Mommy has them too, you know? And so that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I love that you said that, that she's learning to cope. It just gives parents hope. I know for myself it does. I don't know how long it took Gracie to really understand her emotions. Because I know Ellie, she'll be 8 in about 3 weeks, and she's still struggling. Like, if I'm like, how do you feel? Even though she's happy at the moment and laughing, she'll say, I feel sad. That's like the first thing she'll go for. And I'm like, you're not sad. I'm like, don't be silly. Don't play with me, girl. You're happy right now. You're happy. Eliana's happy. And, you know, I'm not sure if you could share, like, when was it that you noticed she was like, okay, aware of her emotions? Because now she's learning how to cope, right? But of course, I'm pretty sure she had to learn first that this is what's making me mad. This is how I'm feeling right now. So, and it's interesting that we're talking about the feelings part right now, because I've been reading a book on untangling your emotions. And it talks about feelings, how, she starts off with like certain things will trigger us as adults now because when we were children, we weren't allowed to feel those feelings. And that was very deep. And it took me back to my childhood, right? How our parents will be like, stop crying. You don't have to cry about that. And you start growing up thinking about that, right? Like, oh, I can't cry about this. So we're trying to break those cycles, right? With our girls and our children. Like, no, feel the feelings, feel all the things you need to feel. It's okay. Just don't stay there, right? And this is what I tell the moms as well. But when did she start acknowledging, like, look, I feel mad, I feel sad, and it was actually accurate?
So for Gracie, and it's interesting you just said that it takes us back to our childhood. So how were we raised? How were we allowed to show our emotions? So my parenting today has everything to do with my childhood. My childhood was, I didn't cry, I didn't show emotions, that wasn't allowed. So I grew up in foster care. My whole childhood, I was in foster care, 15, 16 foster homes, constantly moving, constantly moving. So there was none of that. How are you feeling? Are you crying? We're not allowed to cry. So there was like, you were a little adult and you're going to act like one. That's it. So as a child, I didn't get to experience, talking about my feelings. So childhood rolls into parenthood, right? So now the way I do things with my children is make sure that that's allowed. You can talk about you need to feel. You need to, because then later on in life, it's going to come out in different ways. Um, so the thing is, when it comes to Gracie, I guess I look at her like myself as a little girl almost. So when I see her, I'm like, she's upset. It's valid. She's allowed to be upset. You're crying. What's wrong? Let's talk about it. So I feel like around, like I said, 9 years old, I feel like 9 years old, prior to 9 years old, I don't think Gracie understood really her emotions and why she was feeling some type of way. And I could never really figure out myself. For the most part, I couldn't really figure out why was she feeling such big emotions. I couldn't find the trigger. I didn't know, and I just didn't know. But one thing Gracie does is when she's emotional, she'll look at her hands. She'll do this and she'll cry and look at her hands. And I'm like, after 9, I started to talk to her in a way like, okay, let's go to your talker. And I would pull up different things. Are you not feeling good? Or do you want to go somewhere? Does mommy not know what you want? Like all of these things. And eventually it started to click. So now, if she's crying, sometimes I'll be like, I don't know why she's crying. I'll look at my husband and I'm like, I don't know what happened. And then I'll say, Gracie, can you show me on your talker? She'll come out and she'll say, car, fries. So I didn't understand her prior, right? So before she was crying and having all these emotions, she was trying to communicate to me that she wanted to go without using her talker, because Gracie is like that. She's like, leave me alone. Stop telling me to use my talker. I'm not using it right now. So you're going to understand what I want in a different way, mom. And that's kind of how Gracie rolls. She's a lot like me. So like, figure it out. So now what happens is, once she puts that in her talker, she looks at me like she's got herself together now. She's not crying. She's like communicating, and she'll have the talker and she'll put it in, and then she'll look at me and she'll just stare at me and wait for the answer. And I'm like, so were you upset and sad because mommy didn't know that you wanted to go? And then she would tell me yes. And I'm like, oh, but you have to tell mommy. But I know what happened. At that moment, I know that she didn't want to communicate. She didn't want to use her device. That's fine too. You don't always have to use it. But then that's where I fall short. I'm like, I didn't know what she wanted. So Gracie wants me to read minds.
Exact right. And like that's impossible. Like how am I supposed to know? Like we only know obviously when they've done it and we already know what it is that they want. But that is so true. I know my daughter, like she would get so frustrated when we would drive by like a McDonald's or a Dunkin' Donuts. And I'm like, why is she so upset? And it would just click in my head. This has to be why she's upset. And I would just say, like, you want fries? And fries, and crying at the same time. And I'm like, oh God, here we go again. Another God knows how much money on like processed food. You know what I mean? Like, let's just go to McDonald's because this is what's making you happy, girl. And I'm just not dealing with the crying today. It just be like that. So that is so, that is so true. Oh my God. I'm telling you, you're talking about your daughter, and I just feel like, man, Ellie and her are so similar. And when you mention, like, they're her and her brother, who's also special needs, which is he also autistic?
So originally, when he was about 3, he had a speech delay, all the things. He kind of, his communication and his social skills weren't like the typical preschooler at the time, say. Um, so they didn't diagnose him. Now this is back in 2012. They didn't diagnose him. They were like, let's just see what happens in kindergarten. So okay, goes to kindergarten. And then before you know it, all the things you start to notice. So they see the same doctor, and he is considered to have a learning disability and a mixed speech language impairment, like Gracie, but mild. So although I feel like he's on the spectrum, they haven't put that to it, and they're like, he's just, got a learning disability. He struggles with the speech and language, which always brought me to Gracie. And I've always said, I believe Gracie's language impairment is the strongest of all. Like that's the main issue right there, because I really do feel like a lot of her behaviors and ways are simply that, because she cannot communicate verbally. So a lot of behaviors, things that she would do that were considered odd behaviors, right? I always feel like, well, if she can communicate, I always said that. If she could verbally communicate, would she be doing that right now? Probably not. That's my guess. Probably not. So he can verbally communicate. So there's a lot of, masking going on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and he's
So
how old?
14.
Yeah, so and I was just saying when you say they're like in the same water, but they're like different, but at the same time they have similarities. I feel the same thing with my two because they're both autistic, and Jacob is completely non-speaking. He has no words. He's at the stage right now, he's 5. He just turned 5, where he's like, he still babbles, but he's trying to say like words. So like he'll say papa or dada, and I'm like, okay, how about mama? Thank you very much, because I'm the one right now doing it all, right? Because daddy has to work. Like, come on, somebody. I'm like, God, I'm gonna need you to do something right now. This ain't it, okay? And he just laughs. I'm like, I know you know how to say it, stinker. You just don't want to. So he's completely not speaking. Now, Eliana is like minimally verbal. She knows how, she has a lot of echolalia. So lots of repeating. If I'm asking her right now, we're working on personal questions. So what's your name? How old are you? I don't know if you got to see my one video a while back where I started asking her these questions, and I'm recording it because I want to keep a record to see how fast she's progressing, right? She's still asking the question with the question, and I'm like, I know you know your name. So when I say she'll finish it. Eliana. So I don't know if she's just being stubborn or like she genuinely doesn't like know how to respond that question. Because I really think she does. I'm like, you know that that's your name. You know this is what that question means. I mean, we've been asking her that for so long. And now it's like, how old are you? It's kind of tricky because now she's getting stuck with a 7. And I'm like, maybe we should have started this when she turned 8. It's just a few weeks away. But you get what I'm saying? It's something that we're working on her right now. And so they're so different. They're so different, but yet similar because Jacob is doing things that is reminding me of Ellie when she was that age. So you know what I mean? So but kind of like your case, the language. I agree with you 100%, Kelly. I think the communication part of it is just what really leads a lot of behaviors in children that are autistic and perhaps even adults, that they don't have that language. And even if they have a device, you know how much they have to work to get there, and then maybe they don't even feel like doing it. So it's like I need people to understand, and the listeners, whether you are an autism parent, and maybe if you're not, maybe this is more for you, that you have to understand that it's a point where if somebody was to take your voice, or you were to lose your language, God forbid, right? Out of nowhere, maybe an accident or something, you lose your speech and you can't communicate your wants and needs. This is our children. And I'm sure it's even harder when you had that language and then you lost it. You know how people say like, oh, my child had language. I don't know if Gracie had words when she was younger and then she lost them. Like in my case, Ellie never really spoke. The most that she said was mama, and that's it. But there was really like, we never reached conversation stage or anything. And boom, she was done. Jacob never spoke. So like, I can't relate when parents are saying like, yeah, my child had words and then they lost them. So are you able to elaborate on that a little bit if you don't mind?
So for Gracie, she had words which are similar to now. They were never clear. So Gracie, I'm going back 1.5 to 2.5 years old. She would say things like dada. She still says dada, which there's no mama. There's tons of, if she sees him walk in from work, it's dad, dad. So that's one that never left. I'm like, great. So, but she would say, if I would say, Gracie, do you want cake? When she was little, she would go key like that. Do you want to go night night? And she would go nine nine, and that was it. So they were never. I guess she never said it the right way, but there were sounds. A lot of her words were D and T sounds. So like anything, everything. It didn't matter if I said, Gracie, what's this? It's a book. She would go ta 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 ta. So that's kind of what it was. So a lot of the sounds that I knew what they were for when she was younger, they were gone by 2.5. But it was just a handful. The one that sticks and is pretty clear is dad. And I'm like, you know, because it's me that's doing it all, kid. But nah.
Thank you. I mean, no shame on dads because thank God for y'all, right? To stick around. But like, especially when it's girls, we gotta like focus on the whole 9 yard, okay? But Kelly, are you able to share with us some strategies that you are doing with Gracie right now as her body is changing, right? Some strategies that maybe the parents that are listening, even if they're already there on that, in that stage, maybe still very difficult. I know you had mentioned to me, some books that you're using, which I think is great, and we'll have that down below for you guys. But yeah, what are some of those strategies that you can share with us today?
So basically, I always look at everything like I don't want to start teaching her at the time it needs to happen. So I always do everything early. I'm an early bird in everything. That's me. Like if I have to be somewhere at 10, I'm there by 9:40. So I'm early on everything. So that goes right into stuff like this. So I got her the books and a few books that are really clear and to the point when it comes to the changes that are going to occur starting now through her teens. So she has the books. We talk about it. On her AAC device, I have a folder specifically for that. She sees it, it's all there. But like I said earlier, everything I teach her and show her prior, leading up to, because if you wait until the last minute when it happens, it's going to be like, what's going on? They're not going to know what's going on. So, like I said earlier, exposure with myself. It's the perfect opportunity for a mother with a daughter to use herself as the model, as the exposure, and that's what I do. So, Gracie, I will take her in the bathroom with me. She'll see, she'll get me a new pad. Um, I want her to see and know what's going on, so she does. So this is all preparing her for when her time comes, so she won't be shocked. Same thing with the starting to wear bras. I didn't want to wait until she was ready for one, and then what if it was a struggle to even get it on? So we needed to work. If there was going to be time that had to work on wearing the bra, right? And I wait until the last minute when it actually happens and she needs it. Well, guess what? Now I'm struggling to even get it on her, and her emotions and her hormones are even more, and it might not happen. So I decided, okay, going off of when I got mine, we probably have 2 to 3 years to go. This is the time I'm going to prepare her leading up to when the time comes. So I got her sports bras. They all match mine, like I said. And so she wears them no problem now. She knows, like I'll say, Gracie, go get your outfit for today. I let her pick it out. She comes out with her bra. She already knows, like she needs her bra. And if she forgets it, I'm like, what about your boobies? She just looks at me and laughs. And she's like she forgot. And she thinks it's funny. But now it's become the norm. So the normal way to dress, is all the pieces. So when the time comes for her, she's going to be very well prepared and educated in a sense, and visually learned exactly what happens and why she has hers. So she's aware.
Wow, you're so amazing, Kelly. I love it. And I know your daughter is grateful to have you, even if she's not expressing that to you. But just know that your work does not go unseen and you are doing a phenomenal job. You know, I just think, it's inspiring. It's inspiring because it's not easy, raising our children in this generation, knowing their disability, knowing that there are evil people out there in this world, and just things just continue to get worse, right? And we are the protector. We are covering our children, and preparing them for the real world. And it's like one day we won't be here, and it's like it's another topic that I would love to talk about on this podcast, which is that part of preparation. What do you do preparing yourself for these moments, because we just don't know. So the fact that you are preparing her and you're making sure that she is ready in case of an emergency, she'll know. Let me tell you, whoever's taking care of her, she's going to lead them. Because I know when my parents or my in-laws, which are the only people that watch my kids, babysit them, um my kids literally lead them to the routine. Like they'll tell me, my mother-in-law, my mom will call me like, these kids know. Jacob grabbed my hand. He went to his device. He wants bedtime. Eliana wants to eat her pancakes before bed because this is an every night thing, girl. And listen, she needs her strawberries and bananas with it. Okay, totally my fault because I got her used to that little trio there every morning. So now even for bedtime, she needs it. But you know what I'm saying? Like they know. They'll get used to it and they'll start teaching people how to do it. So I love that. Now, a real quick question for you is when did you start preparing her, right? And exposing her to this part of life, right? The whole puberty thing, the bras, showing her that, this is a pad, this is what you do, right? And I know for many women, TMI, but again, if you're uncomfortable, sorry. For those that are listening, but this is what we're talking women stuff, okay? But like panty liners, right? That's something else. And I did hear someone tell me this, like I can start with that even now with Eliana, like the panty liners, because you start noticing discharge, right? At a certain age. And I'm already noticing that in her. Which I know it's normal because the doctor told me I was freaking out and I'm like, okay, is there an infection? Is it? No, mom, it's totally fine. This is just her body. She's getting older. I was like, what? But she's turning 8. Like, she's only 7. What is going on? And she's like, oh, her doctor was telling me. She was like, trust me, now, in this time, oh, they're developing fast. But you think about it, everything that we eat, all the things. So you don't think about that obviously in the moment, but it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, what age did you start her? Like, do you think this is a good age for me to start with Eliana already, like exposing her to that specific part of that?
So what made me start was I remember the pediatrician telling me, uh, she looked at me and she said, "What age were you when you got your cycle, when you started?" And I said, I believe I was like 12, 12 and a half. So she was like, okay. So she's like, so that's probably about the time, more than likely, she'll end up getting hers. Cause she did, a physical checkup and she's like, she's definitely not there yet. So more than likely it'll be around when you get it. And this was at 9. Her ninth every August. So her birthday's in July. So every August I do their physical checkups, right? Before the school year. And, so it was then I said, okay, so 9, 10, 11, I'm counting. I'm like, all right, probably now, I said to myself, is a good time to start exposing her to it all. And that's exactly what I did. My very next cycle, I was like, hey, Gracie, look, and I showed her because I know for her, like I said, visual exposure is everything for her. So, I started showing her, and since then I added on. The sports bras started before they needed to. The panty liner is a good idea. I didn't even think of that one, so I'm definitely going to start that one. I didn't think to start putting it on just little times because you do notice the changes happening, right? When their clothes change and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So you'll notice the changes, and it kind of like, you're like, no, 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 no. They're too little. You don't want to even, you're like, no. But little things like that, panty liner, sports bra, use yourself as the visual model. You're the mom. There's nobody better to show your daughter, right? Um, and then just all the little things. Like I have Gracie help me with everything. So if I go shopping, she helps put everything away. So on purpose, those items I make her put away. I'm like, where do they go? So she knows where they go. She puts them away. She's just so involved in all of it that's how I'm just exposing her and preparing her leading up to when it's her turn. And when it's her turn, it's going to be interesting, but
Yeah.
we'll get through it.
I was gonna say, when it's her turn, when she gets there, we'll most likely have another interview. So you can talk about that. But yeah, the panty liners, I thought, and you know what, that just came to mind as I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, you know what? That might actually be a good idea. Um, and you know what, if you are a mom and you're listening and maybe you are a tampon user, maybe you need to step back a little bit from that for now. Because I personally don't do tampons, but no judgment to whoever does. But I'm just saying, let's be a little realistic, right? They're already freaking out with all these changes in their body, right? That, come on. I don't think they're interested in having something inside of them. I know that I know Eliana will look at me like, what? What is going on? I mean, she still struggles with. So Eliana had a urine infection, right? A UTI. UTI, is that what it's called? because it's been so long. Maybe she was around 2.5. It was around the time she was getting diagnosed. Oh my gosh, too many things. We were at the hospital. I remember she was in so much pain. I didn't know that that's what it was, obviously, because it's something that's interior, right? Girl, they had to do the catheter on her. Okay, I still remember the name of that thing. This is how like traumatizing it was to her. Till this day, my daughter is very sensitive when I'm like cleaning her. You know, when she's in the tub, because she does not sit in the tub, she has to stand. And oh my gosh, I'm like, and you know, her teacher, I remember at first they were asking me when she first started kindergarten, and I was like, listen, it has nothing to do with us. I'm telling you right now. This was a hospital matter. She's traumatized. Because, you know, obviously they have to find out and make sure there's nothing going on. And I appreciated that they asked that, but I was like, no, 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 no. Listen, no, that's never gonna happen. Not under my eyesight. It's just not. But yeah, she's been traumatized since. So I know that that's going to be a challenge. So even wiping, it's something that she gets real tense. And I think she's scared at this point because she wasn't like that prior to that whole incident. So, um, I appreciate your advice on that. I think that's a great thing to do. And I'm definitely going to start that because I know I got my cycle at 12. So, I mean, yeah, it'll make sense. She's turning 8. I'll see how she's doing this year, but I'm still going to start with the panty liners because I have noticed, you know, the discharge starting to become a thing. Yes. So, and like I said, her breast is starting to form. This is what the doctor told me. Once you start seeing hair, that's when it's getting real. You know, that's when it's going to start coming very soon. So she was like, as of right now, mom, don't stress yourself out. And I said, easier said than done. Anyways, because lots of preparation. People don't get it though. Can we talk about that though? Because people don't understand the fact that our girls are not neurotypical. And this is not, oh, they'll get through it. No. This is not as easy like that. Like, no, I'm telling you, live in our shoes for one day and you'll be like, yep, can't do this. Because it's the truth. Like, it's just, yeah. Anyway, so there's a saying that says in this community, don't judge. It's something about don't judge my journey if you're not in it, something like that. But either way, just don't judge at the end of the day. But before we end the episode, Kelly, I want you to share how are you managing these behavioral changes in Gracie and maybe some new sensory sensitivities. I don't know how is her sensory, but if you could share that with us, that'll be awesome.
So basically, what I do, like Gracie always had sensory sensitivities. So she, you know, if her stomach's hurting or her head's hurting, she's at the point where we are at the point where I can notice, you know, if she's not feeling good, if maybe she is getting a stomach ache or she has a headache because her hormones are now starting to come through and get crazy. So I'm somebody that gets headaches. I'm somebody that gets migraines, you know. So I say to myself, she's probably starting to get that stuff like that. So the other day I said, what's wrong? She kept laying down a lot. I'm like, do you feel sick? And so, you know, I have to ask her and then she's looking at me and she instantly goes, so I'm like, okay. I said, I knew it. She probably had a headache. So I gave her Motrin. And then after the Motrin, about an hour later, she was back to her normal self. I was like, okay. So it's a matter of me really zoning in and starting to really know that whole hormonal change of feeling and looking at myself and saying, okay, what do I have? Because not every person gets headaches before they get their period. But I'm saying for myself, I do. So it's very possible she's starting to develop these symptoms prior to her, you know, getting it. So to help Gracie through all her emotions and the changes that are coming with everything, because she's going through a lot of changes. We use her talker. We use her books. I talk to her about it. She understands a lot of what I'm saying. So Gracie will answer yes or no, you know, with her head. So that's the good part. But that's not something that I was able to do with her at 8 years old. At 8 years old, I couldn't do that with her. These types of conversations just, we wouldn't get anywhere. Now she's at an age, and like I said, something after 9 changed where she just started to understand more, and she was able to yes and no me, and so that helps. And the fact that she had this growth spurt in her regulating herself, that helps too. Like, she knows what she needs to do if she's having a hard time or struggling. And you don't know emotionally. We all, were that age once. So she's probably got her feelings all over the place, and which is something that I've noticed an increase in lately. I wanted to say before, when you were saying about the cleaning with your daughter, what I got was, do you remember when well, I don't know if you gave vaginal birth, but if you did, they have those bottles that you clean yourself with. So I got them. And I said purposely, I'm like, okay, so now when I have mine, I purposely fill it up. Actually, I make her fill it up sometimes. And I'm like, can you put it in? Mommy has to clean. And so I do that on purpose, because Gracie is also like that. She wipes herself, but like you were saying, it's like a half a wipe and throws it in the toilet. And I'm like, no, we got to wipe better. So at least when it comes to the cycle, that bottle is going to be a game changer. So she can clean herself properly each time she has to change her pad. So these are things I'm all
I
over
didn't even
already.
think about that.
Yes.
That is such a great, oh, I love that. I love that. I did not think about that. You see what I'm saying? Two brains are always better than one. I'm just saying. No, but what Kelly's referring to, I was sharing with her how Eliana, she uses the potty fine, pees, poo, all the things. However, she's still struggling to wipe. So I was telling Kelly how, we buy wipes, right? Like toilet wipes. And she's doing a little better with that. However, she still kind of like just throws it in the toilet and still trying to understand the fact that she needs to fully wipe. Um, so I did not think about that, because obviously all that, red stuff, it's yeah, that's actually very,
You
very
know,
good.
another
Kelly, look
thing,
at you coming in through with the resources.
so it's funny because your daughter is doing exactly what Gracie was doing in the beginning of me teaching her to wipe. So she would do the same thing. It was like she wasn't really doing it. She wasn't even barely even wiping herself. She was just like kind of dropping it in the toilet. Now, so this is where the discipline part comes in. And I always say, just because your kid is autistic doesn't mean that you don't have to discipline them or teach them as you would your. So I have a combination of kids, right? So I know what Gracie understands and stuff. So I kind of look at it like I talk to her like I would them, but obviously I tweak it a little bit, right? So when it comes to that, I'm like, turn around, Missy, get back in there. We're going to clean properly. So that's where my discipline part has to come in, because I noticed she was doing that. So even then, when I would say, turn around, let's go back and wipe properly, she would still not do it, but it was better than the dump, throw the toilet paper in and not even do anything. So I'm like, okay, that's much better. Good job, Gracie. Next time we're going to we're going to do a little more. Now, this has been since your daughter's age, 8 years old, where I kind of started to have her wipe herself. And now she's at the point where she wipes perfectly fine. But this is something you are on every single toilet. Every time she goes, I'm like, you gotta wipe good, right? Yeah. So she understands. She knows also at this age and all this time that we've been working on it, that it's not gonna fly. Mommy's not gonna let you do a half a wipe and you're gonna leave. So she already knows. She knows me. Mommy's not playing. We're gonna do this correctly, kid. So, because the thing is, when the cycle comes, if she's not wiping properly for regular bathroom use, right? And then you throw that into the mix, what a disaster we're going to have, right? So I was like, we got to get really good on the wiping. So I focused a lot on that. And it was a lot of, she would battle me a little bit. Sometimes she was like, I don't, and I'm like, nope, we're not leaving the bathroom. We have to do it right. So there was a little bit of a battle period there, which is fine. Yeah, to be expected. I go through battles with my boys too, so to be expected. She was like, I don't like that you're making me do all this, Mom, so, but now she realizes like there's no is not an option and we have to do it. And that's that. So she got used to it. She does it good. But that, cleansing bottle, I have her do it now, like just to practice with it. So like and the funny thing is when I do it, I don't really need to use it, but I do it on purpose to prepare her because I'm going to have her use it. Because in between the changes of her pad and everything, I want her to clean herself good because she may not clean herself like we would, right? So I had her sit down with it and I was like, okay, your turn. So she was cleaning herself and I'm like, good job. So she was cracking up. She thought it was funny. So I'm like, all right, she's more than likely going to have a sensory party when her time comes. I already know it. I expect it. I expect to walk in the room and see a painted room. It is what it is. This is part of it. But I think we'll get through that fairly fast. So I expect it, but that's where the parenting part comes in. And that's where it's like, we're not going to do all this,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I was gonna say, do you think she'll freak out with the blood? Because right now she's seeing it on you. However, it might be a different experience, right? When she sees it like on herself. Like, do you think she'll be like, it'll be the end of the world? And or is it gonna kind of be like, it is what it is? Like
I
she's not
think
really phased. Because I know my daughter, she has to be clean. So um that's what scares me because even when she gets like dirty on her side, she's like constantly like wiping. If something falls, she has to pick it up and I'm like, it's okay, just leave it there, keep eating. No, she wants to pick it up. So that's why I think in my case Ellie might freak out, and she might not be okay with they just like there for a little bit and then she has to change the pad. So that's why I'm asking you, because I mean you are preparing her. However, it might still be different, right? Like, because it is on her body at that point.
so. This is my husband and I talk about this all the time and I think I'm right. I think what's gonna happen is, because I know Gracie in every other way and how her sensory issues are. So yes, she's aware, right? She sees, she knows what it is. She's aware. So when her turn comes and now it's her and she's seeing it, her sensory, you know, what is that word I'm looking for? When, she's curiosity. Her sensory curiosity is going to get the best of her. I already know it. And I'm going to walk in the bedroom and I'm going to be like, oh my God. And I already know
It's
Gracie
a
will
murder
decorate. Listen, she's going to decorate the room. I expect it. It is what it is. But
you're just having
my husband's
you're
like, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this.
wait, you're just having realistic expectations.
Yes.
Okay, you're just
Yeah.
having realistic expectations, which is something I talk about a lot on this podcast. And that's it. It is just the truth. So I appreciate you being honest. I'm like, it's a murder scene.
You know what? It's going to happen. I expect it. But then that's where, I say maybe the first 3, 4 cycles are probably going to be a little, it's new to her, although she's aware of it. It's probably going to be a sensory curiosity. She's going to touch. She's going to want to look at it. I know it's going to be on her face. It's going to be on her walls. It's going to be everywhere. I already know it. We've been down this road before with the poop, so I expect it, but she's at the age also that I expect that it doesn't last long. You know what I mean? And she understands like when the discipline part comes in and like, okay, you explore, but we're not going to keep doing this, Gracie. Like, so she knows my eyes. She knows when I do like that to her, she knows it's no. So the first time I'll be very,
Yeah,
cool about it. I'll be like, okay, so we're going to clean this up. We don't do this. And then we'll see what happens the months after that. But I
yeah,
expect it. It is what it is. But obviously, I'll talk to her about it. Does mommy do that? Mommy doesn't do that by her bed, so you're not going to do that by your. Like, it's going to be a whole thing. But to be expected, I definitely with Gracie. 100. I already
yeah,
know. And my husband's like,
yeah.
"What am I going to do if you're not home?" I said, "Well, I guess you're going to have to figure it out."
Right? It's
Yes, figure
so
it out.
funny. Your husband's probably like mine because my husband literally, even if I'm home, like he's just like, well, she's done. And I'm like, okay, I'm in the middle of doing something else. Can you like literally just wipe her? He's like, but you know, I don't like doing that. I'm like, oh my gosh, but what if I'm not here? Just imagine I'm literally gone. just just imagine it just for a second, honey. It's just, and I know it's like weird to him. I know when I was growing up, I mean, before my parents got divorced, I was like, my mom would tell me like my dad would not change my diaper like ever. Like he was just not a fan of doing it. Part of it, you know, just feeling weird having to do that to a girl. um but man, this episode has been so insightful, Kelly, and I'm just grateful to have you on here for your yes. And I just hope and pray that whoever listens to this just feels encouraged and really feels a glimpse of hope, you know, that it is not the end of the world. You're going to get through it. Listen, I'm learning. I mean, I just turned 30. But I'm learning, right? I got married at 20, so I've been married all my 20s, 10 years with my husband, right? But I feel like I'm still learning. Like there's still things about my life that I'm discovering. I've made mistakes, and some of them which I'm still living with, and I'm still learning how to heal from those things, right? um Even some things that happened recently that it's just been haunting my mind. But I mean, we can't change the past, right? We can only move forward, and we can't change how people feel about you. You just can't. And we can allow it to dwell into that. So every day we are learning, moms and dads. Maybe you're a single dad listening in, and you know you need this insight because maybe you do have a daughter or you have a son and he's going through puberty, right? Maybe not period, but they're going through their own feelings and emotions, right? And so I just thank you once again, Kelly. I don't know if there's any, you know, any last advice that you may want to wish for that mom that might be feeling like she's struggling and she's stuck. Um, Feel free to share those words.
So, any advice I would give is, um, so we've been on this journey for quite some time with two kids. So the advice I can give and what I've learned over the years, how to work with my kids and get them through things and help them progress would be to expose them. Don't keep them in a bubble. The exposure is everything. And I say it all the time on my page. Consistency on your end, dedication on your end. You really have to give it your all because these years fly by. Like my 22-year-old was just in preschool. Like it just in a snap. So if you want to see them make progress, understand that it may not happen in a week, in a month, or even a year. There's things that have taken Gracie 2 years. But if you're not consistent, you're not fully dedicated, and you're not really doing it all, and you're not exposing them, you can't expect all of this progress to just magically happen. You have to really put in the work. You have to, I say it all the time. A lot of parents are like, do you do your time? Do you have to, when is time for you? I have my time. But I like being with my kids. So my little timeouts of going shopping and going to dinner with friends here and there, that's about it because I am like head all in. I dove in and I am just all day, every day. Gracie is my all day, every day. Um, and she is where she is because I did what I did with her. But don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. Doesn't matter how long something's taking, even if it's not happening as quick as you would like to see it happen, or you think it's not going to happen. Keep doing it. Keep going.
Yes, thank you so much, Kelly. That was beautiful. Thank you guys for tuning in on another episode and listening. I will see you guys again on another episode of the Uniquely Wired podcast. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Uniquely Wired podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this space with me. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Until next time.